Buenos nachos, amigos, and welcome to Record Breakers, a music podcast where a group of friends gather together to share music with each other, an album at a time, like a little book club for music. Follow along with our journey as we all discover more music and things like that. I'm Petey Rave, and I feel like I must struggle sometimes. Whether that pertains to today's episode, you'll find out. Here with me is my team, my squad, my crew, my quorum. We've got David.
This podcast, Record Breakers, is going out of its way to discover albums to talk about and review.
We've got Matt.
Kurt Vile is stalking me, and I don't like it.
And we've got Brett.
What did he say Mama just did?
We will go ahead and now harness the power of the Force and the heart of the cards and discuss an album for today. And the provider of the album is none other than David. David, what have you got for us this week?
Genius. It can be found in many different shapes and sizes. Music, acting, various shades of art, various colors.
Macrame art.
Recently, the man behind this album celebrated his 89th birthday, and I wanted to celebrate his long, storied, tenured career by bringing an album to the Record Breakers podcast. Of course, I'm talking about none other than the incomparable William Shatner. And we're talking about his 2011 album, Seeking Major Tom.
Yeah. I didn't realize Shatner was too old to be a boomer. Let's talk about expectations. Because I think we all had some expectations just because this is William Shatner as a musician is a known commodity, even if you haven't heard the music itself. Matt, what were your expectations coming into this album?
Well, I'll tell you my feeling coming into this album, which was dread. I had heard his version of Lucy in the Sky with Diamonds at one point. And so I was expecting a kind of weird, off-kilter, very dramatic, but not quite emotional vocal recitation. But I did, in perusing, I did see that one song included Bootsy Collins, so that was a plus. I knew it couldn't be all terrible. And yeah, the album cover is it's something special, I would say.
Mm-hmm. It's going for something. Brett,
yeah.
What were your expectations coming into this album?
For the last decade or so, I have been on places and listened to things in podcast form where people have used clips of the isolated vocals of many of these songs for comedic effect. I knew that I was going to be getting into a spoken word album. I did not know that we were going to have a cavalcade of guest stars playing not their music. I didn't know that like it was going to be an hour and 30 minutes or whatever it is. But actually, I don't have that down.
Yes,
it was this album.
It's a double.
I mean,
Yes.
there is a large
all
section that we
90
can blame
plus
on Warren,
minutes
but,
of it.
Yeah,
Yes,
it's not all his fault, but it's all his fault.
Yes. Yes. This is definitely. I had an expectations because like I think as old as like man, I think there's jokes about William Shatner's spoken word music in The Critic. Pretty sure.
When will people stop going to Star Trek movies? Maybe when they see this clip of William Shatner's musical number.
Raindrops keep falling on my head. My feet are too big for my bed.
if anybody
Sounds
remembers
about
The
right.
Critic, like it is is a known commodity. It's something that it's a joke. It's a well-worn bit. But this is definitely, I did not know what to come of this album since it came out so recently, and seeing so many, because on the Spotify listing of the album, you can see the guest stars. I'm like, okay, like a lot of guest performers on this album. So I thought it was going to be interesting musically, and it's going to be fascinating what he brings to the table. So I mean, let's just get down to it. David, how would you describe this album musically?
I think we've all been deeply moved and affected by Mr. Shatner's work over the years, whether it was, as Matt mentioned, his rendition of Lucy in the Sky with Diamonds, my personal favorite being his noted rendition of Mr. Tambourine Man from his 1967 album, The Transformed Man. And of course, one track on this album is his original rendition of the Elton John classic, Rocket Man. This album, it is William Shatner in many ways going back to his roots. It is spoken word. It is filled with noted musicians from top to bottom. It's a veritable who's who of musicians, and it is Shatner playing the classics.
Yes. Matt, how would you describe this album musically?
Oh boy. There was a lot going on here. Musicianship was actually really great. Like, there were a couple of times that I'm like, no, wait, that was actually really good. Some of the repeating motifs, obviously Space Oddity, which came in pretty soon, and then they added Rocket Man to that to kind of close out each track. But also, don't tell me if I was imagining this. I'm like, a lot of the songs, I'm like, that's the opening, like, to Roundabout by Yes.
It would make sense.
Yeah. But
somehow.
Yeah. It's to say it makes sense.
There's your JoJo's
maybe too
reference.
strong.
Yes.
It's more. It's you experience it and you're like, oh yeah, of course. How could I be surprised by that?
Mm-hmm. Brett, how would you describe this album musically?
Somebody somewhere knew enough of what they were doing to make. This is a vocal focused album plus the guests. Like, every song is, we're going to do this song where we're going to feature the Shat, well, most of them. And we're going to let them Shat all over the place. And then there'll be somebody here that'll hang out with you. And will do a thing, or somebody who's there will do a thing that is very much them. But they don't do it in their necessarily like in their wheelhouse. With the guests, they kind of they do some stuff. But when we get to songs, like, there are so many songs, and everybody knows all of these songs except for, well, I mean, a few of
Not
them
all
may
of
be
them.
deeper cuts, but not all of them. Like, I should not say that. There is definitely a song that nobody has ever heard ever until today.
Yeah.
Like, there was, I mean, it was a clean recording. Like, it sounded almost like, pop music, like in a clean room. Like, everything was very, very well put together. And then there were some spoken word done on top of everything.
Yeah.
For a lot, but like in between the songs, the little like, oh, so this song's like gonna fade down, and then it's gonna fade up to a part of the way somebody had a script when they put this together, and it shows.
They had an
like
outline.
they're like scene movements, and like it's great. Let me tell you. I'll tell you all about it when we break it down.
Yeah, this album musically, it's fascinating. It's long. It's ambitious. Very ambitious.
It might be a little too much.
Yeah, it's hard
It's
to
got a lot
find.
going on.
Yeah,
A lot of
it's hard
moving
to-
parts. A lot
Like,
of bells
I think,
and whistles.
I think if where I put like my big note was that it's hard to find where it lies within sincerity and self parody. Like it's hard to find where it like is because there's a lot of people coming in and putting on guest performances, doing their thing and doing it with aplomb. And then there's Shatner doing like.
What do you mean
his-
self
Doing
parody?
Shatner.
What do you mean self parody?
they're doing.
We can't
Shatner
imagine any of these people were in the same room with him.
Yes, that's
Like-
well, we never know. But this is
I want to know. I really
I
do.
find
that
the
was my
idea
search.
that the musicians on this album wouldn't want to be in the same room as the venerable William Shatner absolutely shocking. This was clearly a masterpiece, cultivated.
I guarantee that almost everyone that
sincere
featured on this
love
was
of
excited
art.
to be there to do a thing. Just as like they were contacted to, hey, we're gonna do this thing with William Shatner, and I imagine everyone was like,
And they
oh, hell
came
yeah.
running. They
Hey,
came
Warren,
running.
what are you doing? Of
Yeah.
all the people, like,
Yeah.
hey, yo, I know you're probably on tour going to casino, but do you want to play this Duran Duran song? Like,
Hell yes.
Hey, Zach Wilde.
just like there's so much about there could be a fantastic documentary that is living in my head about how this fictional headcanon worked.
Hey,
Like
Toots.
yeah, like
Can I narrate it?
hey,
Yeah.
Sheryl Crow.
Yeah. Well, we'll get to some of these guest stars in these tracks now. When we talk about some key tracks. David, what would be some of the key tracks for you?
First of all, I think it needs to be mentioned on the track Space Cowboy. The one and only Brad Paisley, or I think it might have been Steve Miller, I'm not sure, has a really good guitar solo on this track.
Dying.
Secondly, she blinded me with science. Dare I say, the track with Bootsy Collins, you could make a case that this is the equivalent of Johnny Cash taking Hurt from Nine Inch Nails and making it his own. Absolute marvelous rendition of this track. And of course, I would be remiss if I did not mention this is actually the very first studio recording of Shatner doing Rocket Man. And it lives up to the hype.
Yeah.
It absolutely works.
Yeah. Matt, what would be some of the key tracks for you?
Space Cowboy, as David Shatner mentioned, just a really just ripping guitar solo by, I assume, Brad Paisley. It sounded like Brad Paisley.
Yeah,
Um,
sounds that
Vocal
way.
performances.
yeah. It's like, that's a tele with overdrive. That's probably Brad Paisley. It was just like this whole album. It's one moment of what is happening after the other, and so in the middle of all of
Greatness.
these, sure, and so in the middle of one of these moments of what is happening, you just get this ripping guitar solo. She blinded me with science. It's always great to have Bootsy, baby. He
the
adds
folk of it.
a certain yeah, baby. Come on down to the mothership. He adds a certain je ne sais quoi to anything he appears on, and this is no
she
exception.
hit him with technology. Like
Absolutely,
he
and
says it himself.
he doesn't understand the technology, and that's why he's just a rocket man.
Yeah.
Bohemian Rhapsody
Oh,
is
phenomenal. Phenomenal.
there were several tracks on this album that I just had to pause and keep myself from screaming. Not from
Nearly
fear.
orgasmic.
Sure. You're welcome to say that. And this was one of them. There's this one moment where he just goes, "Mama, oh," and that just breaks me every time. Also, there is a music video to this song that is a fever dream. It's
amazing. It's absolutely amazing.
It
Truly a
fills
testament
you
to the
with
man.
awe. It is awesome in that it fills a person with awe.
Yeah, it is. It is in similar fashion. It is awful, in that it fills you with awe.
Yes,
Awful,
exactly.
full of awe.
A real quick mention to Lost in the Stars. Kurt Weill keeps following me. The after show of last week's episode, I made the connection that he wrote Alabama Song, aka Whiskey Bar by The Doors, and he also wrote what became Mac the Knife by Bobby Darin. And so Jim Morrison and Bobby Darin were connected, and now I find out that those two are connected to William Shatner by the same person, Kurt Weill, who was around in like the late 1800s, early 1900s. Yeah, he 1900 to 1950, writing all this stuff, and William Shatner decided to do Lost in the Stars.
Yes.
Iron Man, throughout this album, I was kind of thinking, this is a lot of narration. And then in Bohemian Rhapsody, he kind of had a couple of moments of like, oh yeah, he's almost singing. That's probably because, an hour and a half of straight narration is unsustainable. And then I heard him sing on Iron Man. And now I understand why the rest of the album was straight narration.
Yes. Oh yeah.
He's 89. He was in his 80 by the time this was done. Can't quite hit those notes like he used to.
No.
That
You won't
time
be
on
hearing
Boston
any
Legal
Mr.
really,
Tambourine Man.
Yeah, you can't quite have
all that
those
time
moments.
with Candace. Yeah.
Brett, what would be some of the key tracks for you?
Oh, there are so many. When he says he's a gangster of love, there are things that I have heard come out of William Shatner, and there are things that I haven't. Not just Space Cowboy, but let's say Space Truckin'. I'm a big fan of The Deepest of Purple.
Yes.
And
Reggie Blackmore saw this.
but when Shatner is saying, "Come on, let's go space trucking," it's like, no, that
Yes.
you are making.
Yes.
When Bootsy said, hit me with techno. Yeah, that's like, I'm gonna have to go in and like get some isolated Bootsy from.
Yes.
I still think I would rather have had Thomas Dolby and Bootsy Collins hang out together, because that sounds like more of a fun time. But aboard one submarine and the other guy's mothership. But Bohemian Rhapsody was bad in so many different ways that, like, for one, he's like, "Mama just killed a man." He also the song completely cuts right when you're expecting the guitar solo. It just
There's just a taste,
Yeah,
just to make you really excited to get the great guitar solo.
You can almost
You're
hear
like,
the
yeah.
click of the overdrive pedal, like that's
Yeah.
or the volume pedal getting ready to sweep the volume.
Oh yeah.
Just to get you some really saturated AC 15 goodness out of a handmade. Nope, you don't get that. But what you do get
Swerve.
is Twilight Zone with a gigantic chunk of Warren Haynes.
Yeah.
Like I was like, okay, like what I'm listening, and I was like, okay, like what can you do to this song to like standard tuning slide guitar? Like I'm like, what's gonna happen here? Because I've I've dabbled in the brothers, and I've seen what Warren and Dickie can do, and I'm wondering what how does this even who do they call to get this to happen? Like, I don't know.
I was really
like-
hoping that Twilight Zone would be the Rush song, but no
Yeah.
dice.
Yeah, you know, there's some things that they could have had in this album that would have been great, but they did have something that was pretty amazing. Everything, like, this isn't the first album I've heard where somebody kind of sang a Duran Duran song. Wesley Willis, I love your version of Girls on Film, rest in peace. But you know, when you got the guy who plays is famous for writing one of having somebody like Mr. Howe playing a disco beat while Shatner talks over it.
Genius, absolute genius.
Like nowhere, because like Duran Duran's not you don't pick Duran Duran if you don't want to sing at karaoke. Like that's not it's not One Night in Bangkok, like I like to say. You have to work for some Duran Duran, and there was not work put in. But boy, the drums on it, like it was a. Yeah. Also, I'd like to say that the ending of Space Truck, and they at least put the I don't know if it's floor toms or like the double bass stuff at the end as it was supposed to be done. That was always good. You got to have those little details for somebody who's listened to Space Truckin' on the radio played a million times. Got to have that drum fill right.
Yeah. Yeah. There's a lot of songs. You guys touched on a lot of the key songs. I will say, yeah, she blinded me with science. I love Bootsy. I love that. It's fun that this is not the first time we've had random Bootsy on an album where you didn't expect him, and hopefully it's not the last time. We'll have to see. It's always nice to have a surprise Bootsy.
I feel like Bootsy is like those videos you see of Bill Murray just crashing weddings and stuff.
Yeah.
I like to imagine Bootsy is doing that, but with recording sessions.
Yeah,
just the door flies open.
They just happen to be the recording sessions that are happening.
It's Bootsy Collins. I'm just going to let him in, do what he wants.
This star-shaped bass guitar in hand.
Because it's gonna do some magic. You either use the taker or not, but it's gonna be some magic. Just surprise Bootsy. I'll say Spirit in the Sky, having the freaking Neil Greenbaum song with some random Peter Frampton. It's just like, I'm like, all right then. There you go.
Absolute brilliance.
And also I will give a shout out to Mrs. Major Tom, because it's funny because obviously it feels like a lot of the length of this album feels like it makes me think of like when you have an idea for a mix CD and then you it's like, all right, all the songs with that are about Major Tom, like, you know, Space Odyssey and all the other songs that came out, because everybody loves that song and it wants to reference Major Tom. Then you got to the third one, it was like, all right, this is too many. That 3 songs.
But we never found Major Tom. We never found him.
They found the third song about Major Tom, which is of course one more than anybody knows. And they decided, you know what, that's enough. But fortunately, it also affords us one of the better vocal performances on this album, which is anything other than Shatner, but which is Sheryl Crow is actually a lovely performance of this song that is not that well known, and it actually was a nice experience hearing her sing with this arrangement. It was actually kind of like a cool little haunting performance, and it was pretty fantastic. Yeah, let's talk about conclusive thoughts. Let's bring it back around the horn. Matt, what would be your conclusion at the end of the day?
I actually enjoyed this album a lot more than I expected to. It's, despite my need to pause several times and just kind of scream a little bit, there were certain points that I'm like, A, this is actually pretty good, and B, this is just too bizarre to not like. And for me, the question is always, will this end up in, if not regular rotation, am I likely to buy this album? And this one actually makes the cut, but mainly just so I can always have it extremely convenient for whenever I'm with somebody to be like, listen to this bizarreness. Bink.
Yeah.
Because you don't want to put that to the chance. Like you can't afford to leave that to, you know, oh God, what if I have good internet or not? No. You got to have this ready to go.
I, as somebody who keeps a copy of Bill Cosby's Sergeant Pepper on ready to go, I understand.
Yeah. I just it's a lot. It's a lot time-wise. It's a lot spiritually.
Almost
it's a
too
lot
much.
physically. It's a lot
even close.
metaphysically.
For a regular good musical album, I'm thinking this is a little long.
Yeah.
It might be a bit
no.
long.
I
It might
was
be a bit
like,
long.
how many tracks? And most of these are 4 minutes or above. Some of these are 7 minutes and above. It's a long album.
It's a double album.
If you're going strictly for length, duration to dollars ratio, this one's hard to beat. I will give it that.
It's a good
This
value.
is the most album.
Absolutely.
This is
Yeah.
almost the most album.
More shat for your buck.
That's
more,
right.
more shat for your buck.
Exactly.
Yeah, I liked it in a very certain way.
Yes.
An extremely, extremely particular way.
Yes. Brett, what would be your conclusion at the end of the day?
I mean, this is an album that isn't poorly made. It's just a bunch of decisions were made that I would not have made. Like, I wouldn't make decisions. Like, I did laugh out loud a couple of times listening to this. And, you know, most things that make you laugh aren't terrible. So, like, there's a value to listening to this and knowing this and being like, oh, yeah, you've heard that Iron Man vocals isolated. Wait until you hear this. Let's go space trucking, buddy. Come on.
Come
Wait
on.
till you hear
But yeah,
Iron Man
come
with Zach
on.
Wilde.
I got
doing
my
his
chips
wails.
cashed in.
But I mean, compare this to, like, because Shatner, didn't he like do a movie in Esperanto and like he's
This
done.
man is an artist.
I mean, he's been made fun of for this shtick, and he's beaten it to death here. Like, you know, they're the only thing that could possibly be worse than like this talk singing is if we had like the Leonard Nimoy album where he talk sings but also sings Bilbo Baggins. Like,
Okay, crossing
then-
that one off.
but then Bootsy Collins
Was that
shows
the
up.
other album that I was choosing between? Be honest with me.
Okay,
Only 3
I-
foot tall.
I will cross that one off then, gentlemen.
Oh no, it's been on my list before, but there's like poetry on it. It's different. This is spoken word stuff. This is probably this is the only of its kind that I think we've listened to.
Yes.
And you
So
know,
can I
that's a
bring the
novelty.
transformed
I
man?
I mean, we can play the bingo card of anything.
Yes.
Anything goes. Be the center square.
Yes. We will not stop you.
Are you sure?
I can't physically stop you. We're social distancing prevails, so I cannot physically stop you. We're separated by many miles. Yeah, I think it's I have a love for William Shatner and both. I think David, of course, has a greater connected fandom to it, but we both share a love of Star Trek. I unabashedly enjoy the original series from when I actually decided to sit down and watch it. I think it's an actually fantastic fun, even with the schlock that it includes show to watch. And William Shatner is a big part of that. He's actually for all the jokes about his delivery, he's actually a very fantastic actor and a very fantastic personality, and somebody who can deliver things with a certain aplomb and certain gravitas and certain like fun that makes it an enjoyable experience, including his spoken word music and his spoken word performances. And I think this album shares that. It is an interesting experience, and it is a fun experience, if a bit overdrawn and overstretched. This could have been a lot less tracks. This feels like they were just like, all right, let's do this one, and let's do this one, and let's do this one, and they had already called
the
Zakk
sessions were going so well that they just couldn't stop. I just couldn't get enough of the
But
shit.
then they also couldn't stop for a second take on a couple of these vocal tracks.
Yeah.
Too,
Why
so,
would
you
they?
know.
Yeah, and there were some of these inclusions.
It's
of
gotta
this
be
song.
real. It's gotta be raw.
Some of the inclusions, some of the songs were a little bit loose in their connection to the theme. Very loose. I mean, like I could see the three major Tom songs all work well, and obviously the space themed songs. But there were some like ones that maybe were just like throw-ins.
Bohemian Rhapsody.
Yeah, possibly. Yeah.
What does that have to do with any of this?
Yeah, and like it could have been this didn't need to be 20 songs. Like this didn't need to be like this long. You could have we could just done some editing. It's a fun experience. I just think it just maybe was ambitious, maybe a little bit to its fault. But yeah, last but not least, David, what would be your conclusion at the end of the day?
I brought this album to the podcast for my own sake, really. I wanted to bring my own wacky album to Record Breakers, and I've accomplished that goal. I have a bizarre, unironic love of William Shatner's musical works. There is something esoteric and strange that just hits the right button for me. And for all of these songs, he never breaks character, and I love that. His delivery, on top of this ridiculous lineup of musicians, and the fact that this album is well over an hour long, adds to the novelty of it. And I think as a novelty, it is a work of art. And if you appreciate Shatner as a character and his personality, you cannot miss it. It is cannot miss. And if you feel like you want to top your friends that will say, hey, listen to this, and they bring an album, you can say, oh no, listen to this. And bring William Shatner, Seeking Major Tom.
Yes. Those are our thoughts on Seeking Major Tom. We'll have to see if we found him. I don't think we found him. Now we get to the main event of the evening. We get to the moment we've all been waiting for. To get to our haiku reviews, where we sum it all up in poetic form. Who knows how many of us are going to actually do the thing? So it's the delivery, but yeah, let's get down to the nitty gritty. Haiku numero uno. Matt, what is your haiku?
Enjoyed in spite of, pausing often to bellow. What the actual fuck?
Brett, what is your haiku?
It's not a great bit, and it just keeps going on. Folks at home, it's bad.
My haiku. Ambitious project with great guest performances. Concept stretched too thin. And David, last but not least, what is your haiku?
Shatner roams through space over some classic rock hits. He gets it. Do you?
I don't know if I do.
I don't think I do.
But I enjoyed it. I didn't get it, but I enjoyed it. Well, you'll have to see if you enjoy it or get it. You'll go ahead and report to us if you do either one. Just hit us up in the comments. Go check it out on our Spotify playlist. Play Record Breakers, the home game. Do your due diligence and your due diligence. Do your homework. Do your studies. On the Spotify
Watch some
playlist.
Star Trek.
Yes, go watch some Star Trek, including the original
TJ
series.
Hooker,
Boston
Legal.
I'll tell you,
Priceline commercials.
if watching the entirety of the original series is a little too daunting, I will tell you, watch City on the Edge of Forever. Watch City.
Great eye makeup.
That's one I would recommend. Some would recommend
This Side of Paradise.
Some would recommend. Oh, what is it? The Spock episode. The Spock wants to fuck.
The one where he
brain?
goes through.
No, not Spock's
no,
brain.
not Spock's brain.
That's the least I would recommend.
I mean, it's a fun episode.
No, the one where he wants to fuck.
He goes through puberty. Yeah.
A mock Spock. A mock. I think.
Watch Star Trek.
A mock time.
Watch Star Trek.
A mock time.
Yes, that is
Mock
it.
time. There you go.
Yes.
The trouble with triples.
Yes.
Spread the
No,
services.
City on the Edge of Forever. A mock time is the one that many people would recommend, and the one Deej recommended. All fantastic episodes with some really great moments, and where you actually see that, hey, William Shatner actually can act. And it's just he has a thing, but he can actually put on really great performances, especially when you give him a really great story. But yeah, go watch some Star Trek. But yeah, do your due diligence and listen to the album at least once, because it's an experience. On that Spotify playlist, now getting back to the matter at hand, will be next week's record, and it will be provided by Brett. Brett, what are you bringing for the group next week?
Well, this album inspired me, and it inspired me in a way I didn't expect. So we're gonna hang on to a little bit of this album and move on to the next one, where I'm gonna bring Duran Duran's self-titled album. But wait a minute, they had more than one self-titled album. Which, what? It's the one from 1981. It's their debut.
Their debut.
That's right.
The
Album.
W.
So watch Barbarella, learn all about Duran Duran and Dildano.
Language.
To take it up with Barbarella, that Dino De Laurentiis will film anything.
Yeah, let's listen to that album, but that'll be next week, and this will be this week, and you can of course find us all over the internet. David is at Call Me DJM, Matt is at MRickW, Brett is at Hibbity Bibbert, HIBBI2YBIBBARD. I'm at PD Rave. The show's at 4 Record Breakers. That's the number 4 Record Breakers. RecordBreakersPodcast.com. RecordBreakersPodcast@gmail.com. Rebelli.net for listen to other shows. Rebelli TV on many places, but in YouTube, mainly YouTube. And who knows if I'll put it somewhere else. Yeah, check us out. Subscribe, share, like, hit the bell, do all the things. Until next time, hasta los huevos.
Toodaloo.
Rebelli Podcast, baby.
May the force be with you.
May the funk be with you.
Diamond Club hopes you have enjoyed this program.